about July 2018, just a word of warning, I am going to be getting political, be talking about the current President of the United States and some of the politics and whatnot as well. So if this is something that offends you, please move on. I'm not going to entertain a lot of complaints because I'm talking about some politics and some social stuff as well. Okay, so you've been warned. So we have some very intense stuff happening in July 2018. I'm going to be mentioning the president and his chart because I mentioned it earlier in January of this year when all those eclipses hit his 7th house and this area. This is Trump's chart. He's got a Leo rising, and we had the eclipse. The earlier eclipse was in Aquarius in his 7th house, which really affected his relationships. We had sex scandals and all that emerge at that time, and I said at the time, you can go back and watch the video in January, that wait until the eclipses later this summer, which are going to happen in his 12th house and over his Saturn and Venus, and you're going to really see some major stuff happen. And that's what we're seeing right now, what we're going to be seeing. So Donald Trump, this is his chart, and we're having these eclipses now right here in his 12th house. This is the solar eclipse on July 12th, July 13th is happening right over his Saturn and Venus. Saturn's very early Cancer. Venus is also very early Cancer. And this solar eclipse is happening very late Gemini right over this Saturn, which is his 7th house ruler, which has to do with relationships, and Venus, which is the indicator of relationships. And both of those are in his 12th house. This is why he's dishonest with his partners, why he cheats on them, lies about it, and kind of is that way with everyone, because Saturn, the 7th house ruler, has to do with all other people, and Venus also has to do with his career, because it rules his 10th house and rules his Rahu sun. This is why he's dishonest in business as well, scamming people, well known, not to mention bankruptcies, losing his money all the time, but also mainly just being a dishonest business person. And this is a matter of record. This is not some opinion of mine. You can look it up. Again, I'm not going to just defend all these obvious facts now. So, but all of these things are going to be very explosive this summer, starting around June 10th, 12th, 13th, when the sun gets close to this eclipse point and Rahu eclipses the sun here. Rahu eclipses the sun in his very volatile 12th house of lies, secrets, even prison. I'm not saying he's going to prison, but people around him who might be going to prison, who have a lot of his secrets, like other people he's not been honest with, like, I don't know, Michael Cohen, Manafort, other people. And the exposition and explosion of those secrets into the public consciousness and the consequences for all of that is definitely up right now for him. This is happening within the framework of Mars Ketu, very powerful right now, and whatnot. So I'm going to talk about the general astrology as well. Now, you see that, watch Jupiter. Jupiter is retrograde at the beginning of the month. So from the beginning of the month to like July 10th, Jupiter is retrograde. Of course, Mars and Saturn are also retrograde, so all the outer planets are retrograde. Saturn is especially, very, strongly opposed the Sun at the beginning of the month. So that Saturn-Sun opposition at the beginning of July really shows a lot of things like perhaps sluggish digestion, fatigue, if you feel yourself kind of tired. That also is shown by this retrograde Mars with Ketu. It's draining at the beginning of July. It's really a time for your disciplined activities, your yoga, your pranayama, your disciplined energy and activity, because you're very much aware of this strain and this drain of energy that is very possible early in, early July, right? and then especially all the retrograde planets as well. So if we go forward again, we're going to see the moon goes through Pisces, July 5th and 6th. Then July 7th and 8th, the moon is in Aries. So 7th and 8th, we can see a kind of enthusiasm again, like a kind of passion and enthusiasm, and a sort of renewal, wanting to express ourselves individually, but also in a larger sense. There's a lot of collective implications for July 2018 because of this Mars K2 and because of these eclipses, because the eclipses really bring us into a more collective sort of zeitgeist, because you have Sun, Moon, and Earth lining up in the same plane of three-dimensional space. So our collective karma really comes together. And a lot of our collective karma right now revolves around these qualities of Cancer, which has to do with nurturing, these qualities of divine motherhood, these qualities of, literally like reestablishing the matriarchy rather than the patriarchy. So we're seeing a lot of that. Again, in the U.S., it's really very much been about the sort of Me Too movement all over the world, actually. And I said that last year when the nodes moved from Leo, when Rahu moved from Leo into Cancer. I said it's going to be about reestablishing divine feminine, divine motherhood. We've seen that because right after Rahu went into Cancer, Jupiter went into Libra, and then shortly thereafter we started all this Me Too stuff, where we see how much women have been mistreated in the U.S. and in other countries as well. So this is a sort of backdrop right now, and these eclipses that are happening in July and early August are going to really show this. We're already seeing the outrage in the U.S. with immigration issues. We also see immigration being a big theme in Europe as well, and in many countries now, this sort of potential protectionist movement is really taking hold. In the U.S., we've seen children separated from their families, from their mothers especially, and this outrage, this sort of collective outrage that has recently, taken hold and sort of exploded. Again, this is very much the Rahu and Cancer energy that I talked about, where it's not just this kind of rhetoric of law and order and this kind of matriarchal, sort of patriarchal approach rather. Now it's like, yes, but we need to be connected to our humanity. We need to take care of these children. Of course, children have become a sympathetic, symbol of the, patriarchal law and order, heavy-handedness that's been associated with the U.S. government recently and Trump's team. So again, these issues are coming to a collective head right now in the U.S., and we already hear talk of how women are going to really sweep in the next election. We have an election season here in the U.S. 2018. So again, we see the momentum building, and this moon in Aries could really be a time. This is Saturday and Sunday, July the 8th, July 7th and 8th. We could see more protests that weekend as we see Mars K2 getting closer. Mars is retrograde, going back toward the exact degree with K2. And again, it's an exalted Mars, so we're ready to fight for what we believe in. And we're really reflecting on like what's worth fighting for. Now we're going to see in a couple days here, again, this is July 8th, 9, 10, 11. By the 11th, Jupiter is direct. Now Jupiter's moving forward in Libra. Again, very much a major player in the whole Me Too movement, establishment of more civil rights, social rights, the social contract. Jupiter moving forward in Libra is big for, again, getting us aligned with what we're ready to stand for and stand against. And by the way, there's an aspect here, what's called a Tajik aspect, where Mars and Jupiter are in aspect to each other. Now Mars is retrograde away from the aspect, but they're still within orb. So this square, this shows a tension between our beliefs and what we're willing to fight for. So this shows this collective tension being played out right now, right? So we see this is right before the eclipse. This is July 11th. Then the eclipse actually happens late July 12th. So July 11th, 12th, 13th, this is when we could really see some, some new exposition of female problems for Donald Trump. And it could even be earlier. It could be as we're getting closer to the eclipse, like that weekend, like July 10, 11, 12, or around this time, again, because this eclipse is happening right on his Saturn-Venus. So you're going to see these themes really come up. Now, the way we're seeing it is what happens is Rahu goes over these or starts to approach these planets. Rahu, the north node, gets really close to them. And then the sun gets close, and the sun gets close to the node. The sun gets close to this Rahu transit, right? And then the moon comes as well, and all of it gets fired off. That's what the eclipse is. That's what the ecliptic is, and that's what the eclipse points are. So this could be a very tough month for Trump and his desire to want to conceal all of his misstatements, flat-out lies, probably criminal behavior. His fixer, we're seeing Michael Cohen. I'm recording this on July 2nd. His fixer, Michael Cohen, just came out to the news and said, I'm loyal to my family and my country. Hard to believe that part, but not to Trump. That's secondary. And whatever the angle might be going on there, that he's just kind of lobbying for a pardon or whatever. The bottom line is this. This guy has all the dirt. Trump knows it. Trump knows what these prosecutors have, and it's just a matter of whether or not Cohen is going to flip or not, and he probably will. But we're going to see these secrets exposed, in spite of how much he wants to deflect and detract and distract. These eclipses are what they are, man. It's going to blow up these secrets, and we're going to see maybe a new sex scandal or the hardcore evidence of Cohen paying off these women and all of that stuff, at the very least. I think we're also going to see strong evidence of the other illegal international criminal activity, like with Russian oligarchs and money laundering through properties and all of that stuff, which it takes about 5 minutes of investigation to see the clear connections between that and Wilbur Ross and the Bank of Cyprus and all of the very obvious connections that Trump has been engaged in for decades. We'll see how that goes. But concurrent to that, there's also, the other side of the coin. And again, this is the cultural U.S. struggle that's happening, which is shown by this Mars Ketu. That's one side of it, and that's the largest side. The smaller side is the very limited but also active forces within the government that are seeking to undermine, this whole deep state. And of course, there was the email that was sent from, what was the name, Strzok or something, that showed, a bias against Trump. Again, to some extent, that's also going on, but it doesn't even wash that the deep state was against Trump winning. Then why didn't he lose? If they're the deep state, they could have leaked anything. They could have leaked that, hey, guess what? He's under investigation right now, which he was at the time. And this was why, even, Harry Reid and other senators at the time were furious that this thing came out about Hillary Clinton. They knew that Trump was being investigated because of that his campaign was being investigated because of the influence of Russians. People in the Senate knew that at the time. This is why they were so furious with Comey, because why aren't you letting people know about that then? If you're going to bring out this nothing burger, which turned out to be nothing, because Anthony Weiner's laptop. So again, that whole deep state angle doesn't, it only takes 5 minutes to think through it rationally to say that's just partisan politics. I mean, whereas the other thing, like the investigations, the raids, you have indictments. These people have been indicted already. You have Manafort, who was a campaign manager. You have Flynn, you have confessions. And Michael Cohen is going to flip. They have hardcore evidence of this has already happened. There is no evidence of anything, any impropriety on the other side. And there actually isn't. There's an email that was questionable, but you could probably subpoena emails from FBI agents all over the place. It doesn't excuse it, but again, it doesn't make sense that this is proof that they were against Trump. He won. If they were against him, they wouldn't have sabotaged Hillary Clinton as much as they did. So, however, all of this is fuel to the other side, who just believe everything Trump says, actually, that it's fake news and you can't believe anything. He's preparing to undermine the verdict, let's say, of the Mueller investigation. But if Michael Cohen flips, or Manafort, or these other people flip and just start showing hardcore evidence, then this whole campaign to undermine Mueller is moot. Because now you can't undermine Mueller and deep state. These are your people. This is why he keeps floating pardons and stuff like this too. So this is building to a point where we could see some crazy unraveling of situations. And so, you know, it's very scary stuff happening. And once Jupiter starts going direct, again, Jupiter's also justice. It's also, you know, moving forward on what we're willing, again, to, to what inspires us, what we're willing to defend. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy resigned. Now Trump is going to get to appoint another Supreme Court Justice. And if you're wondering, he is not going to support a moderate. You can go to the bank. It is going to be someone to overturn Roe v. Wade. He said it in the campaign. Anyone with this feverish dream that he's going to appoint a moderate, wake up. He's not. And again, this could very well be a catalyst, because that's supposed to happen on July 9th. July 9th is here. This could very well be a catalyst for major uprising or major protests to going to the streets and these kinds of things that this Mars K2 portends. Because he'd come out and nominate someone who is a conservative, who is on the record of wanting to overturn Roe v. Wade, which he's going to do, and you're going to see people rise up and, take to the streets even more. Again, push back. It's the same thing I just said about we're doing this. The backdrop is Rahu in Cancer. Like I said, when he went into Cancer in September, women's rights, the Me Too movement, overturning Roe v. Wade, abortion rights, this is now up for grabs. And you're gonna see people mobilize, women, men, but it's mainly driven by women. This is why I said, I'm just gonna say this too, last election season, months and months and months, I didn't like Hillary Clinton at all, but I kept saying, do not vote Jill Stein and your conscience. How's your conscience gonna feel when Trump is in office? If you don't vote for Hillary and vote against this guy, you're gonna regret it. I wonder how people's conscience is now. The people that didn't listen and that just gave me a hard time. I made everybody mad in the election season because progressives saying, no way I'd ever vote for Hillary, Hillary and Pizzagate and all those left-wing conspiracies. Okay, now we have this. And I'm a white man, pretty successful white man. Trump should be my guy. Okay? He's not. Okay? I was saying this because I would go on Facebook and other places and say, okay, ladies, how's your conscience going to feel when you lose the right to an abortion, or your daughters do? Or when they start separating and they instill a deportation force like Trump said. He said he was going to do it as a candidate. I know Hillary Clinton was yucky, but she was not this. Again, this is just, I'm saying this again because we have elections coming up again, 2018, midterms. We're at the same point. Progressives, get out and vote against something. Sometimes your vote is against something. And false equivalence between the lesser of two evils is just intellectual laziness. Lesser of two evils is less evil. You got that? It's less evil. When one person is just a yucky politician who has worn out her welcome, and the other is Donald Trump, who is a total demagogue and going to just divide us, and who is intellectually not up for the task, to say the least, and terrible policies and almost nothing redeeming, dismantling all the social structures. How can that be a false equivalence? So this is what's up. And these two sides, I guess, are being pitted against each other with these divisive policies. And Trump is going to keep going. That's why he's more rallies, again, more distraction, trying to rev up and excite his base even more and more now with rally after rally every week. So he's in for quite some shocking revelations, and it's dangerous because he's got a lot of power. And that includes power to maybe create a false flag event. We need to watch for this stuff. We need to be vigilant. These things could happen in the U.S. as well. But I think what we're going to see is some devastating revelations come out. Some devastating revelations come out around this time, where more major sex scandal comes out, and some of these people who had been protecting him start to sing, particularly Michael Cohen, probably Manafort as well. So if we go forward, you see, even after that eclipse, July 15th, we have, then the moon continues through here. Then, again, this part of the month, the end of July, July 20th, and then we just go forward. It's this moon Jupiter. Again, now we're right here with the moon join that Jupiter. Then the moon is debilitated in Scorpio, 22nd, 23rd. End of July, all of this time, this is where we could see like some crazy, I don't want to necessarily say false flag events, but again, some just crazy revelations that come out, or and world events that could have us not sure what's going on or which way to turn. And then especially then this lunar eclipse, look at how tight the degrees are. 10 and 11, and the moon is eclipsed at 10 degrees. So, the moon is eclipsed when it's exactly the opposite, when it's opposite the sun or join the sun. So look, this is where the moon is eclipsed on July 27th. This is San Francisco time or West Coast time. Mars is at 9:52, K2 is 11:46, moon is 10:15. This eclipse, again, this lunar eclipse, the end of July, again, this could be major explosive time. And that could, again, we got to be careful of, again, I'm not going to say that I think there's going to be like crackdown, government crackdown or anything like that, but just explosive potential in the world. Again, explosive revelations coming out, perhaps about the president. We could see some major civil unrest. I said in a recent update that I think we're in for a summer of some major civil unrest. And we could definitely see some of that around this time of this lunar eclipse, because the lunar eclipse has a lot to do with the collective, with the people. And this lunar eclipse of July 27th joined K2 and retrograde Mars. Again, major civil unrest. Now I'm talking mainly about U.S. politics, but this is global. A lot of this is collective. Like I talked about the Me Too movement in the U.S. and all of that. We've seen that happen around the world. But even also all of the crazy things our president is doing, it's affecting world economies and world relationships. These kinds of things like world economies, like economic meltdowns and blow-ups, and we could see quite a bit of that, especially around this full moon. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw major, like financial panic and crisis perhaps happen around this full moon at the end of July, mainly because of, Capricorn also has to do with money and with investment and futures and all of those kinds of things. one of the things that, again, and I don't think Trump is even smart enough to pick this up, but you keep starting these trade wars with all these countries. These countries don't need us, right? Part of the reason, part of the trade-off a little bit in the trade policies was that countries also trade and invest in dollars, in US dollars. So even when like Europeans would trade with China or whatever, they would often trade in dollars, which keeps the dollar strong. Trump gets in there and starts battling with all of these countries, and they might start trading in euro, and the dollar tanks. The dollar starts to get devalued. So the consequences of this are going to start to come home. And yes, it's going to mobilize conservatives and progressives especially. It's going to really motivate progressives to say, okay, our voices aren't being heard at all. Now we're going to raise our voices. But it's a tricky, dangerous time. July 2018 is very tricky politically. Again, personally, this is a time where seeing things in a higher perspective and seeing things beyond just you as an incarnated being, for lack of a better way to put it, is also important. To not lose yourself in things you can't control. Again, it's still, you're waking up every day, and you have to do your practices, and you have to stay connected to the heart. You have to keep your intelligence and discrimination about you, not react like a maniac and be triggered at others, because then that just triggers the same response. This exalted Mars, especially joined Moon and Ketu, especially joined Ketu, shows the need for spiritual practice, meditation, discipline, or else frustration, anger, and destructive thoughts and ideas. So you want to really keep that in mind. Mars is going to be closer to the Earth than it's been in a long time. And the other thing is this Jupiter direct is really a time to reconnect with our teachings, reconnect with our teachers, and really show up, whether it's socially, politically, or whatever, for what inspires you, and really get back into your, learning and teaching. I know that's what I'll be doing. I have some courses planned, and, really sharing what's meaningful to me, and, not block out the world, but also, again, remember what we can change and what we can't. We don't have control over everything, but we can certainly give voice to what's meaningful to us, try to be fair and reasonable about it, and keep our eyes on the prize, which is something beyond this world. I've been spending time with my guru Amma, and being around a being like that, who is established in the divine, again, yet totally immersed in the world. She, being connected to the truth of existence and to your divine nature is not, or it should not be, a rejection of the world. It should not be a rejection of what we see in front of us. All of the great epics in India, especially, like the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana, these were passion plays about the world, where we find God immersed in the muck and the tragedy of the world. It's always war and battles and pettiness and jealousy and asuras and demons trying to take over the world. This is nothing new. And we should remember that. This is nothing new. And we're undergoing a big test now in the U.S. and in the world, where tribalism and economics and, international corrupted, societies that have been corrupted for international elites are all coming to a head. And of course, the strategy is to divide the common people. We need to be very careful not to do that, not to lose our humanity and get too hooked into the appearance of things, and just stay connected to the heart, and the truth will be revealed. And also stay connected to the mind and the intellect. And, so this Jupiter turning direct is going to be big. in that regard as well. So it is an interesting month. 2 eclipses, and then early August we have another eclipse, which I'll talk about when we get to August. But these 2 eclipses are going to have major shifts on the world. The President of the U.S., major pressure on his relationships again, and I think we're going to see some secrets exposed, big-time secrets. Could even lead to a quick departure. You never know.